Hey Jeff, anything new in the last week that's got you inspired?
Yeah, I've been trying to do like self-merging code. So like agent will propose a fix, make the code change and then review it and then merge. Sort of sort of works, but think in a week maybe it'll be something pretty inspiring.
Cool. Little more hand holding for now.
Yeah, exactly.
Got you.
But what's cool is like I got the CodeRabbit merge gate working. So CodeRabbit can kind of act like a person and just automatically do the approve. And usually when I look at the PRs, I'm like, it was pretty reasonable. But I think one thing that's still a little lacking is just it still needs human judgment. So like if you let it go on for too long, you'd be like, yeah, like in theory, all that CI passed, but you kind of did the wrong thing sometimes.
I got
So you might need a new model update, like Sonnet 5, Codex 6 or whatever, before that's really cool.
you. That far out? I don't know. I feel like we're probably like 2 months away with how fast everything.
Maybe. Maybe
Test,
we'll see.
test, test.
What is
Mhm.
up?
Hey, I got a question. What's the issue for you, Jeff, with merging? Because, like today, I've been using open code and it just merges when I tell it to. So, what's the challenge in your situation?
Um, my challenge is not
Test, 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 test.
yep, I can hear
Oh, sorry, my bad, my bad.
you. Yeah, I don't mean like merging like I tell it to, but like let's say I give it a task and then it's working in a PR and then it kind of merges on its own. Um, so that's not hard to do as in get that merge, but then is that merge something that I agree with when I look later? I think that part is the part that's not fully figured out, at least by me. If someone's got it, that'd be great.
So, you are using code review agents, right? And
Yeah.
that's not addressing the issue.
Sort of. So CodeRabbit will kind of like, I feel like it gets like 70% of the comments, maybe the most important thing. But sometimes there's a bit of a judgment call. Like, how would I put it? Okay, let's say I'm like, okay, I want to build a new integration test, right? And then something kind of similar already exists. You could still have a sort of quality issue where you make like a duplicate integration test and then CodeRabbit goes, everything's fine. So what I'm trying to do is I'll be like CodeRabbit plus my customized code review to try to replace my judgment to some degree. All right. I'll start in 2 minutes. Let me just ping the Discord channel. Workshop setup. So there are some people who kind of have like never installed OpenClaw, and I want to kind of get them set up. And then the other people like want to try an experimental thing, which I haven't even fully gotten working, but I think for more advanced people, that'll be cool to get like a sort of staging environment and run two OpenClaws. So I think if I'm not, too busy helping new people set up, then I'll try to help people like finish debugging the last part, or maybe someone else will get it. Then I think 10 minutes Q&A, 10 minutes some more advanced topics, and then just more Q&A. And probably after every 5 minutes or so, we can do a few minutes of discussion. So I'll just set some timers to make sure I don't go off track. All right, let me start. All right. Can everyone see this presentation?
Yes.
All right, cool. Yep. So this kind of describes like my setup. I'll just keep it really high level for this part where when everything works, maybe like 70% of the time, you describe your task. And then what's nice is OpenClaw will have like context and memory about what you're talking about. So for example, like let's say I'm like, all right, fix this thing. It's a very brief Slack message, but OpenClaw can remember like what I've asked it to do before. So for example, I'm working on this thing I'm calling a skeptic agent, and it's a custom code review thing. But if I'm like, all right, fix the skeptic agent or whatever, right? It kind of knows what that is, which is nice. You don't have to re-explain a lot. I use multiple agents with work trees. That's very key for parallelization. CI code review, people know that. And then kind of focus on proof. So like whenever I ask OpenClaw to do something, I ask it to like send me back proof. So kind of know that it really did the thing instead of hallucinating. We'll show a brief demo here. We need to narrate it a bit. All right. So you don't really need to read anything, like everything here. But the most kind of interesting thing is like, I'm like, okay, try to write some OpenClaw memory files. So it kind of remembers everything I'm doing in this thread. And then it's like, okay, like, why can't you write these mem0 files? You don't need to necessarily understand the whole task, but the goal was I was trying to like make some special OpenClaw memory files that do like a little more than the standard integration. But you can kind of see you can talk to it and be pretty brief, and then usually get reasonable outcomes, but sometimes you'll have to debug it. So then it's like, all right, there's some timeout thing. I'm like, give it a longer timeout, right? And then I asked it here, like, what are the priorities and what we're working on? And I'm reading it here. And then I might have just said like, I just make code for it, right? So another interesting thing about this is you can kind of see from like the types of responses I give, they're not that like special, as in I actually think an agent could replace me. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now to like get things even more autonomous, and you'll see this with LLMs, like you're working with them and they'll be like, hey, I've got this thing ready. And I'm like, okay, well, run the test, right? All right, so I'll show the next slide now. Oops. Okay, we'll go into some concepts right now. Like, what is OpenClaw? So I think what's cool about OpenClaw is it's not just about a particular repo or the code, but more of the concept. So, I've got this cool super diagram, but first concept is frictionless communication. So I know we have other things like Claude Cowork or whatever, but I think they still have a similar concept where it's like, can you like easily talk to your AI versus like you've got a remote desktop into your computer or you have to go sit down. So that kind of enables a certain really higher level of velocity. Then I think the central axis is very important. So, there's a spectrum. Like I kind of go like a little more cowboy and I give it access to most things. Not my bank account, right? But Google Docs, Gmail, whatever. Maybe someone will get a weird email from me, but that's fine. Um, the more access it has, the more powerful it is. So when you think about a lot of the decisions that you do, I think a lot of them are just not like super sophisticated. You're like, okay, like I got to copy and paste from this doc into this Gmail or whatever. When everything is centralized, you put it into AI, you'll usually get either a pretty good outcome, I think if you like iterate on it, or you'll get something that moves you forward. Um, and I would say this was especially kind of powerful at Snapchat. So like at Snapchat, I have a prototype service that talks to like 30 different services at Snap. It's actually more like useful in a workplace than personally, because personally I just do a lot of coding. I don't have a lot of data sources, right? But let's say something's going wrong at Snapchat, there's some investigation, and you have like 5 different systems and the code. You can open up a lot of Windows Look yourself, where you can put it into a central AI. We're not even using OpenClaw, it's just a central MCP server, and we're like, figure this out. And it'll give you reasonable hypotheses. You can quiz, and it'll be like, I don't know, not even 10 times faster, like 100 times faster than me manually doing it. So something can be figured out in like 30 minutes that could, I don't know, take me days or maybe even a week. And I think the final thing is memory. This part is still like work in progress, I would say. I think they just released the upgraded memory plugin too. But OpenClaw will have like a history of the messages that you sent it, and then it'll do some compaction by default. And I upgraded it with a vector database as well. Um, the idea is to like kind of replace yourself more and more. So you kind of remember when you saw me doing those slacks, it didn't seem like the things I said were genius. I'm like, okay, continue very often, right? So how much can it replace you? I think as models get better, more and more. Also, when you're working with the memory, it's nice to be like, this memory, how did it change the prompt to the final worker? And I can get into that a bit later. Right. I'll give a brief thing about my system architecture. So you got the user. I'm calling this OpenClaw harness, but this is just customizations I have on OpenClaw. Then I use this open source library called Agent Orchestrator. I think some of the contributors or main guys are here, so they can talk about it a bit later. And then it goes to external systems to do work and especially code review. All right, and then here's a stack. Got another super pyramid. So what do I use? Primarily OpenClaw. I like to start everything in OpenClaw. OpenClaw has these agent orchestrator managers that manage your workers for you. Or sometimes when I want more personal control, I use CMUX terminals. So CMUX is like a terminal program, but it's pretty good for parallelization and AI development. Then I use the open source framework that I forked, Agent Orchestrator, to do the workers. And then once it gets to here, this part is like not really controlled by me as much anymore. So I'm calling them managed agents, but basically like you have a worker that runs Claude Code, and Claude Code itself can run agents, and those can have sub-agents. So once you get to this Claude Code part, right, this part is not exactly my stack, just stuff I use, but this part of the stack I'm changing a lot more. I'll pause here to see if anyone has any questions or thoughts.
Can you hear me? So I have a question. So
Go ahead.
the real question is, why use OpenClaw versus directly use Claude?
So yeah, that's definitely a good question. The reason I use OpenClaw is specialization. So when OpenClaw makes a decision, I want that context to be more about like the spec or the goals or like the history of what I want in the task rather than the code. And you can just imagine this, right? As soon as you open up Claude, it reads Claude MDs, it reads skills, it reads MCPs. A lot of those things are sort of independent of like the actual task. It's more about how to do the task. So imagine like 25% of your context already taken up by implementation versus like when you think about OpenClaw, you're like, okay, I want to think about exactly what I want to do and how it relates to all the other slacks Jeffrey has sent me in the last 2 weeks and put it all together and give me like a reasonable spec. Let me know if that makes sense.
So I mean, so you're basically saying, if I'm trying to rephrase what you're saying, is that Claude Code is something much more specialized. It's for coding.
Yeah.
And you're thinking of OpenClaw as more of a replacing you type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a bit of a hybrid mode though. So I don't do everything through OpenClaw. If something gets messy or it's a big task, I actually go into the CMUX terminal to work. So then this is actually like, you could think of this as like using Claude Code to talk to an orchestrator, which manages other instances of Claude Code. But in this situation, I want more of a coding context. So it's like, maybe OpenClaw gave something, but the workers are getting stuck or they're confused. Then I have one worker with all the same context as the other worker. You want to be like, okay, what is possible in Greenfield or in a particular part of my code base, let's say making new integration tests in a new folder. Can that part at least be Greenfield and set up in a more AI or agentic way? So I'll explain each stage. First stage, no AI. People probably know what that is. And there's autocomplete. Maybe some people skip the stage, but it was basically, you're typing code and it finishes off for you. Pretty nice, right? Then it's the code assist stage. So this stage, usually you are doing some of the coding, maybe half the coding, but the AI is like writing the code for you as well, and you're looking at it, checking it. I think this Claude Code stage that some people have gotten to is sort of a big shift where because you're often just looking at the terminal and reviewing code, not really looking at the IDE, you've kind of changed things to be like, Claude, you really are the coder and I'm the reviewer, versus like here where you're kind of like pair programming together. Then once you make this shift, then you're like, okay, like I can sit around looking at Claude doing work, or I can review the code later. If I review the code later, can I parallelize? So then you want to use work trees. And I have a recording of this in Zoom, so you don't have to take notes or anything, but work trees will give you isolated copies of your code base, but at least share the Git history. So they're not going to, take up your directory like crazy. A lot of people do multiple clones of a repo, but I would say it's usually not as good. OpenClaw is a little orthogonal to some of these concepts, but I just kind of think of it as a big multiplier for reasons I described earlier. Sort of like replacing yourself, central access to AI services, and a reduction of friction in communicating with your AI. Then, some of you have heard of Ralph loops. They recently released the Claude command called /loop. And basically that just gets your coding agent to keep working longer than it normally does. So if, for example, you give it a big prompt, usually it doesn't last for like 5 hours, right? Or if it does, I would be surprised. Sometimes it might be 30 minutes to 1 hour, but I think when you have a looping strategy, whatever it is, you're going to get like multiple hours of planned work. And that's very key when you're like optimizing for like times you're not really active, right? So when you're sleeping, what's happening, right? Like if nothing's happening, then and your weekly token budget is not being used, then you're not really like fully getting your money's worth, right? So OpenAI released this article, just remind me to link it later, but it was called Harness Engineering. Thought it was a pretty insightful article. And the main thing is like, how do you set up your code base to really like improve agent autonomy? So for example, it's not as good as this, right? But let's say you have a compiler, right? And it produces some bad assembly code. Would you go and go like, okay, let me fix that assembly code? I mean, you could, maybe if it's an emergency, but usually you wouldn't do that. So instead you'd fix the compiler to basically go, how do I prevent that in the future? Now, obviously that's a lot more deterministic than LLMs these days, but that's sort of the philosophy or North Star. So whenever something goes wrong, can I modify my Claude MD, my agents MD, my skills, something so it doesn't make that mistake in the first place? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Or worst case, if it happens, can I at least have some solid integration tests to detect something goes wrong? And then the agent can kind of loop back and go like, okay, something's wrong. I'm going to reapproach it. So one example that's pretty cool is,
So, there's a certain level of integration testing, but then after that, the manual testing,
okay. And basically it's hard for you to keep up because it can generate so many things, but you find yourself as the human bottleneck, right? Does that feel
Yep.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a / command for you that'll magically solve all your problems.
Mhm.
Just joking, but I think this will help. Okay. So the approach I take is I try to like automate as much tests as possible. I don't know if you've tried like sort of browser tests, but I think people try to start here and go like, okay, I'll have 1,000 browser tests, and then it gets every single thing I could get, right? Not really, right? Because they take a while. Sometimes they're flaky. So I try to do this minimal repro ladder where everything I build, I try to build it with TDD. And every time I find a bug, I try to execute this ladder. And if you think about this whole harness engineering concept, every time something goes wrong, either I try to change my prompts or try to fix tests like this. So for example, let's say I'm manually testing something, right? And I see a bug. I run the / command and I go, what's the minimal thing that could reproduce the bug? So sometimes it really is a unit test, right? As long as you can reproduce it, like you make a failing test, you fix it, and then you rerun the test and it works. Sometimes it's more of an end-to-end test. Here, what I mean by an end-to-end test is you have your server or app, and you don't mock out any of that code inside of that server or app. but you might mock out network calls or disk reads or something truly external. Then this test is like kind of like a backend type of test if you think about it, but it's supposed to not be with UI. So for example, with my role-playing game, this is like a backend test that makes a campaign, does every single thing a player does, but it does it without a browser, right? So you could use MCP, which usually is JSON or whatever, or HTTP. Doesn't really matter actually. And then the final thing is the browser test. So some things like are visual. I mean, maybe you could even have CSS tests or JS tests, right? And that kind of goes here. But then the final thing is visual. So I would recommend you like try similar approaches to this and be like, okay, like which problems truly needed that human or not. And I think what's kind of cool is like every quarter or maybe even every month, like it improves. So before, like I had to really manually test a lot because like, this worked fine, right? But these things didn't work that well with agents like last year, like a year ago, even 6 months ago. But now like agents are pretty good at like nailing down a lot of browser tests for me. Versus like when I started, my agent would have a lot of problems, finding a pop-up and entering a password. Now, no problem. That was a little long, but does that kind of address the theme of your question?
Yeah, I think this is good. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Take a
Yeah,
look.
just remind me for all these slash commands. I'll put links here and stuff. All right, cool. Anyone have any other questions related to some of that stuff? All right. If not, I will go here. All right. So here's two websites that I've built. Yeah, while that loads, I'll show this one. So this is like a AI RPG. What's cool about this is I've got a default campaign, for example. Yeah, pick some options. You got an avatar. And what's cool about this is it builds a custom world for you that reacts to you. So you can like kind of say whatever you want, do whatever you want. You'll get a story back. The main difference between playing this versus like you could just always go into Gemini chat or Chat GPT or whatever is that I have like a D&D system. So if you play your own like games or novels, like you kind of just win too much versus like with this, you'll actually do like dice rolls and be like, did the person actually did you actually succeed in your action or not? All right, so while this is going, I'll also show this thing. Yeah, so this is funny. This website is like a multi-AI analysis website. So what I found was like whenever I was doing research or whatever, I would go to multiple models and I would be like, what's the answer? Then I copy and paste them all. I put them into one model. So pretty simple concept, but this does it for you. So usually I like these answers better than like asking one model. And I'm like, okay, how do I do this workshop? Right. I actually didn't follow this because I thought about doing it at the end, but I probably should have. So you'll get a pretty decent answer. And then what's cool is if you scroll down, you'll see like, okay, what were all the individual models? What did they do? Then here I've got like what their contributions were. So, and I use Cerebras to assemble just because it's fast. All right, and I'll show this too. So what's cool about this is you actually have like real stats and do dice rolls and stuff like that. I'll show like one story entry. The chat too. Yeah. So this streaming thing actually, a year ago, my model had like a lot of trouble figuring out this streaming thing, right? And then I think I just tried it again like 3 months ago and like one shot the streaming. So things really improve a lot. So yeah, it'll generate a story for you and you can kind of say whatever you want. So I could even say something funny like, way should handle it for me. And you can pick other choices. And we'll see how this website goes, but I'm gonna try like some more exciting things like give each character an agent type of thing. But of course, there's a lot of tokens spent, so you got to balance that. All right. So I think, yeah, all right. So I got the dice roll, right? But like, obviously it's a DC just means difficulty class if you play D&D, but it rolled a DC 20 because like, how are you gonna like run away easily? Everyone's gonna see you, right? So I failed the dice roll. And then narratively it reacts. So blah, 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 right? And then he watches your clumsy attempt at flight, right? That's pretty funny. Yeah. So anyway, definitely give it a try. You guys try it out. Give me some feedback. All right. So I think now we can try the sort of oh yeah, I think I demoed the Slacks already. Oh, I'll do a CMUX demo. Okay, I'll do a quick CMUX demo in Slacks, but basically what's cool about Slack is like it's more high level. So I try to like not be managing one PR, but I'm managing multiple PRs. So I'm like, okay, what's the status, right? We got a bunch of workers, and then what looks wrong, right? So, all right, we have some failing CI checks. And then often I'm just like, what do you recommend? Right. If I want to install a program, I think something lagged here, but it did install this actually. Just didn't report back. Or I'm like, install all the Anthropic skills for me. Great, right? Another cool thing is scanning CMUX terminals. So this is a program that I use called CMUX. It's pretty good for just parallelizing work and stuff like that. But what's cool is it has programmatic socket access to all these terminals, similar to TMUX, but I can scroll up, right? Unlike TMUX, I always forget how to scroll up. So these terminals can talk to each other, and also Slack can talk to them too. So I can just be like, okay, like, what are my terminals doing? And it'll actually be like, all right, this is what they're doing. And then I said, this to explain this is me controlling anti-gravity through CMUX to like do work. Just the quick reason is anti-gravity has the best token deal. So like I try to programmatically control this. There's a million combos or whatever. But like if I'm clicking on this, right, like I can't do it when I'm sleeping. But what I can do is I can have this terminal. I guess I cleared it. Oops. Yeah, I can have this terminal control this, and then this basically has unlimited Opus 4.6, which is really key when you're trying to like, get your best deals and tokens. So this kind of implemented a lot of stuff on part of my roadmap. All right, and I'll demonstrate this too. So I think something was not working here. Let's see. All right, so I think my skeptic agent is not working right now.
Like having control over like basically where in my system am I using pure functions? Where do I have side effects? I feel like if I lock that stuff down, I'm going to get better results. But you're ahead of me, so like, is that what you're seeing? Have you tried it that way?
Definitely +1 to all of that. The only thing is sometimes I like vibe spec where I don't read the spec very carefully, but if I get a bad outcome, then I go back and then I actually flesh out the spec and read it. So I just think there's a bit of a balance where like, I could spend more time up front, but sometimes it's going to one-shot it. Did you already read the harness engineering article by OpenAI as well?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's a good one. It kind of broadly covers what you're talking about, but I think what you're talking about is the right strategy to get your agents more autonomous. So I'll share that link and then Troy can kind of, all right, Andy has discovered fire. Great. Troy can talk about, I actually like Troy's UI the best for orchestrators. But Troy can talk
Right,
about
by
his.
the way, your screen, can you like make the window smaller? Because you're like an ultra wide. Yeah.
Yeah. It might not format correct. I guess this is fine, but it's not gonna focus unless I share the window. It's not gonna focus. So I might as well just full screen it, I think.
Yeah, and then Rob, you can see what Troy and Calvin think about your question too, because they're kind of in this space.
Yeah.
Sorry,
right.
Jeff, what are you doing using for spec?
Sorry, what was that?
Like, what are you writing your specs with?
Oh, I just use superpowers. That's this Cloud Code plugin.
Okay, okay.
All right, let's let these guys present and then do more Q&A.
Yeah,
right.
I'll try to keep this under, let's see, like 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right, so this is Agent Loop. This is an agent orchestrator. I guess I haven't tried the agent orchestrator that Jeffrey's using, but I've tried, let's say, like Claude Teams and Ralph Wiggum and things of that nature. The biggest difference between something like this and Ralph Wiggum is like, first of all, there's like a Kanban UI, right? So like a sprint, like Kanban board, where you can queue up tasks and run them overnight, similar to Ralph Wiggum. The other thing is that you can generate it using the chat. Eventually, there'll be like spec coding where it will ask you like a questionnaire of like different design decisions you want to make throughout the design, and then you have your TDD and PRD, and that will generate very detailed tasks for you. For either a greenfield project or brownfield project, if you just have a very robust feature and then decompose it into a bunch of different tasks. And then each column on the Kanban board is bounded to a specific custom agent. So not only is this an agent orchestrator, it's also an agent engine, similar to if you guys have heard LangChain or Langsmith or NAN. You can build your own agents, and each agent will have a tree of decisions that it can go through, which I'll talk about in a second. But you can bind each column on the Kanban board to an agent, and when you start an agent, for example, a task like, write such and such feature, right? In this case, it's like an Electron desktop GUI that we're working on for Agent Loop, because right now I'm showing the TUI, but we're working on a GUI too. Once you start the orchestrator, it will pull with these persistent agents that are actually running in the background. So that's the one thing that's also different about something such as like Cloud Code agents or Open Code agents, or I guess OpenClaw is like probably one of the first sort of persistent background agents that you can think of, because they run it with cron jobs. But here they're always running in the background, similar to like maybe something like a video game NPC, and they have a tree of decisions that they're always going through. And they can pull tasks in that are queued up, and they'll pull them into the Kanban board. And then as each task is run, it will process it. It will QA it. For example, if it's in the review column, if it's done engineering it, writing the code, it will pull into the QA column. And once QA verifies it is correct, if it's not correct, it'll move it to block. But once it verifies it's correct, it will release it by pulling up creating a pull request that you can review. So there's still a human in the loop if you want, or you can sort of auto YOLO it and have it auto merge. But yeah, before you merge it into main and put it into production, you can just have it make a PR that's very detailed and review it. And because each agent is customizable, it can also, be fitted with like, the QA agent, for example, could be fitted with like browser use. The default will be like end-to-end, or sorry, the default will be like unit tests and integration tests, but you can also fit it with like, Playwright or any other browser use, or backend tasks, or maybe fit it with like AWS or Vercel agents, right? And those will be all have like restricted MCP tools, or be able to bring together composable skills similar to OpenClaw. And when you're making these tasks, it'll be put in this directed acyclic graph. So this is actually what makes the agents able to run in parallel, because you have an intelligent sort of description, this graph wired up of task dependencies. So if a task is dependent on another, right? Let's say you have a front end or back end task, those can be run in parallel. But if you have like a project setup task, that's obviously going to be an initial dependency that everything else is dependent on. So nothing else in the DAG will be processed by the Kanban board until then. And then you have something like this view right here. Let me actually restart Agent Loop to make sure the daemon's running. There is a bug. This is the dev build I'm showing right now. So it's possible that there might be an issue with the daemon right now, but let me start it again. But it should start all these background agents, and each of these agents are fitted. Okay, yeah, it is running. So each of these agents are fitted with MCP tools and a new concept, right, that current agents don't have in agent harnesses, called the behavior tree. And this is a concept taken from classical AI, video games, robotics. where you sort of merge classical AI, the determinism of it, with the non-determinism of LMs. So with LMs, they're great for generating code and being creative and finding creative solutions to problems. But the problem with them is they do what's called graceful degradation, right? With graceful degradation, the LM will just keep coming up with backup plans until, it runs out of backup plans. It doesn't have the data from its training, and then it hallucinates and lies to you. And I'm sure everyone's experienced this at some point, right? Where LM will just give you a completely BS answer that makes no sense, or it does make sense, and it's just deceptive enough to sound like it makes sense that it actually tricks you. And then maybe you pull some broken code into production, or in the case of like the military, that could result in killing the wrong target. In the case of like insurance, it could cause legal issues or misappropriation of funds, things of that nature. So you do want these deterministic layers in some cases, because otherwise you'll just get a result where you're lied to, especially in critical cases. It's pretty important. But the way it does that is it creates these structured output in JSON. Let me move my screen a little bit. So it produces structured output. So you can see in the result of this custom agent I created, right? The ShadCN Electron agent. So I made a specific agent which inherits from the base engineer that creates that is specialized for Electron and ShadCN, which is a React library. So it's working on the front end for our desktop GUI, and each node in the behavior tree creates a structured output result. And this is part of what allows you to create a deterministic output, because every single thing is checked programmatically, right? So when an LM outputs a structured result, each of these fields are checked when necessary by a programmatic node after, right? And this allows for, and not only that, it allows for better context engineering besides these deterministic programmatic checks, right? Because you're condensing and compressing these particular tasks into specific nodes inside of the behavior tree. And the behavior trees can get pretty complex. So if you see here,
right?
yeah, it would be cool if like it somehow just gen AI some kind of visualization, even if it's not like a tile-based game where it's like all programmatic. It could be like just if image models got good enough, right? Like it just created like an image of the situation that's like a hand-drawn, like D&D sort of black and white picture or something like that.
Yeah, I prototyped it. It was okay. I didn't get super great outcomes, but again, I didn't invest that much. I might even start with the avatar though, because I would say like right now the avatars are not bad. When you're like, okay, just give me a picture of the character, versus like 6 months, a year ago, like it would just generate something like, what the hell is this? Like, this guy's like delivering a pizza and it's a medieval fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would look
those
at
are all
like
definitely good ways to go though, for sure. I'm gonna get into it at some point, I think.
yeah, for image models, I would look at Civit.ai if you've ever seen it, and just look at like the fine-tuned LoRa's, right? And they just create like a much more distinct or specific art style, or like, results that you're looking for. Or if you got into it deeply enough in the future, just fine-tuning your own models to like, I want this exact result.
How do you spell that? Or
Civit.ai, I'll just type it in chat. I'd be careful. I mean, I would just turn off like not safe for work or whatever on your account if you're in a precarious situation where you're not allowed to look at that. But besides that, it has a bunch of like normal models for that sort of thing, or normal fine tuning LoRa's, they're called.
So yeah, actually, what's funny is I have this spicy mode thing. It actually works decently well. You can turn it on and do whatever you want.
Nice.
You use Grok basically.
How do you you said you have to use Grok?
Yeah. So Gemini.
I was going to ask how you get past the censoring.
Gemini has more